Good morning, third grade, and happy Wednesday. Yesterday we talked about how do we describe plane shapes. We talked about points, lines, line segments, endpoints, and rays. So keep those things in mind today because today we're going to be talking what's called an angle. All right, I'm sure somewhere in iReady you've been hearing about angles and seeing angles, and you're like, what is that, Mrs. Swallia? Today we finally get to figure out what an angle is, okay? So here's a shape that our friend Jason has drawn, okay? So let's kind of talk about what we learned yesterday. We talked about open shape, closed shape. So looking at this shape, we see that if we start at one end point and we continue around, if we stop at the same end point as the starting end point, we know that that is a closed shape. So do you see how this is a closed shape? What I also want to talk to you about is the line segments, right? From endpoint to endpoint is a line segment or a part of a line. Because remember, a line does not end. So in order to show a part of the line, we use line segments. Line segments have two endpoints, right? So if we have a line segment here, that would be one side. So, like we did yesterday, we count the sides. One line segment, two line segments, three line segments, four line segments. So this shape has four sides, also known as four line segments, and it is a closed shape. So today we're going to be talking about angles. Okay, so I want to describe what an angle is using some terms that we've talked about. Sometimes we can see an angle like this. This is showing two of those things that we talked about yesterday. We have a point right here, and then off the point, we have these lines. The lines, a figure like this shows an endpoint and a line. That is called a ray. Do you remember that? A ray? It's a ray if it has a line that's continuing on forever and one endpoint. Here we also have a ray, one endpoint and a line that continues on forever. So to find an angle, they are where two rays meet up. Or in a case of a shape, it's where two line segments meet up. So here's our angle, ray 1, ray 2. So we would describe this part right here in the center as an angle, or what you've learned it before, a vertex. So there are a couple different types of angles, but what I want you really to focus on is what's called a right angle, okay? A right angle creates a little square in the corner because this line and this line meet up. So if you can draw a nice little square, remember, a square has to have all equal sides. If you can make a nice square right here, that means it's a right angle. If I try to draw a nice square here, would it look like a square? No. How about here? If I try to draw a nice square here, would that equal a square? No. But how about this one? If I draw a nice square, would that be a right angle? Yes. A right angle is when we can have two straight lines that would make a perfect square. So you're going to learn more about right angles as you go through. You're going to learn the names of the other types of angles. But again, I just want you to focus on right angles. So what are we going to do about these ones? What are we going to do about ones that aren't making that perfect square? Well, the first thing we're going to talk about is whether they are less than a right angle or greater than a right angle. What I mean by less than a right angle means that is this angle skinnier? Do you see how this is skinnier than this right angle? In order to make this a right angle, I kind of have to tip it a little bit taller. So to say that it's less than a right angle means that this angle is thinner than a right angle. A greater than a right angle shows that, look, if I wanted to make a right angle, it would cut right here. So it's a little bit thicker than what a right angle would be. So it's larger or greater than a right angle. So all I want you to think about is this a nice right angle that can make a perfect square? Is it smaller than the one we would make a perfect square or less? Or is it larger or greater than a right angle, meaning it's bigger or thicker than a right angle? Okay? So that's really all I want you to be focused on today. Right angles, greater than, less than. So let's talk about this shape, okay? We want to find those right angles. So let's count how many right angles we would make. Looking at this line, this makes a perfect little square. So we know that this is a right angle. This, nope. This one, nope. This one, yes. So Jason's shape has two right angles. Do you see those two right angles right now? One right here and one right here. Now, how many angles are less than a right angle, right? So we know that there's two right angles right here. So we've already used those corners or vertices. So let's talk about these two, because those are the only ones that are left. How many are less than a right angle or skinnier? We talked about this already. Only one. This one is skinnier than a right angle, therefore it's less. How many angles are greater than a right angle? We already used this one, and this one. So how many vertex or vertices, corners do we have left? Just this one. So your angles should all equal how many corners, endpoints, whatever you want to call them, we should equal them all together. So because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 corners, that means that there are 4 angles that we need to talk about. Okay, so remember that. This is our only example. Remember, the shape has how many angles? How many vertex or corners does this shape have? Let's count together. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means that there are going to be a total of 4 angles. Maybe it's 4 right angles. Maybe it's 4 less than angles. Maybe it's 4 greater than angles, or a bunch of angles added together. But we've got to make sure that you count all 4 of those angles, okay? So right angles. Right angles make those pretty squares in the corner, okay? Do you make a square if we go from here to here? No, they don't really make a nice square. How about this one? From here to here? No, it's kind of curved. And look, these angles look the same, and so do these ones. So there's actually no right angles in this shape, okay? There's no right angles. How many are less than a right angle? How many are skinnier than a right angle? Does this look skinnier? No. How about this one? Yes, it's just a little bit skinnier. If I wanted a right angle, this would be very straight. But because it's not straight and it's actually a little skinnier, this one is a right angle. This is less than a right angle. Remember, we said that this one and this one look pretty close to the other, right? They're kind of the same. So 2 of these angles are less than a right angle. Do you see how we don't make a perfect square? They are smaller than a right angle would be. So we've used 2 angles so far out of 4. 0 are right angles, 2 are less than a right angle. So you can kind of tell which ones are greater than a right angle just by knowing that we have to have 4 angles total. This one and this one are not right angles. They are not less than a right angle, which means that they have to be greater than a right angle. You see how they're larger than what it would have originally been? We should have these straight lines to make a right angle, and it's not showing straight. So that's the 4 angles that we have. So remember, friends, we only have 3 things we need to worry about. Right angles, whether it's lesser than a right angle or greater than a right angle. Remember, you have your give me a hint, check my answer on your practice. Please use those tools if you are confused. It will help you get through it, okay? So this is just day 1 on angles. I understand if it's a little confusing, but try your best. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.